For 13 years, a young woman in a small farming community endured the same cruelty from her mother-in-law, spoken almost every single day, that she was worthless because she couldn't give the family a child. One evening, she walked to the well behind the house and never walked back. 3 weeks later, her husband began waking at exactly 2 in the morning to the sound of someone knocking, calling his name in a voice he would have recognized anywhere on earth. He let her in. And from that night forward, according to every single member of his family who was there to witness it, he was never entirely the same person again. Stay until the end, because what his wife eventually asked him to promise her, on a night she named specifically in advance, is the reason this family still refuses to sleep with any window facing that well. Ruth Calloway married Daniel Hale at 16 years old, moving into the Hale family farmhouse in rural Kentucky the same week, as was custom in that community at the time. Daniel loved her, genuinely, visibly, in a way neighbors would later describe as unusually devoted for a young husband of that era. But his mother, Margaret, made Ruth's place in that household a daily trial almost from the start. The reason, spoken openly at the dinner table more nights than not, was simple and cruel. After 13 years of marriage, Ruth and Daniel had no children. An old mare with a young bridle, Margaret would say, loud enough for the whole house to hear. 13 years, and not one single grandchild to show for it. What good is a wife who can't do the one thing a wife is for? Daniel rarely defended his wife openly. Not out of indifference, but out of the quiet, conflict-avoidant nature that had defined him his whole life. Ruth absorbed each comment in silence, night after night, year after year, her composure fraying a little further each time. On the evening of their 13th wedding anniversary, Ruth dressed carefully, hopeful, in the closest thing she owned to her wedding clothes, wanting to mark the occasion the way she had as a young bride. Margaret's cruelty that particular night cut deeper than any before it. A barren old mare playing dress-up like a bride, Margaret said, in front of the entire family. I cursed the day I let this dried-up vine take root in my garden. This choked the life out of everything green in this house. I've told you for years, Daniel, take a second wife. At least then I'd hear a child's laughter in this house before I die. She could die tonight, and it would be a mercy to all of us. Ruth looked at her husband. Daniel said nothing at all. Ruth walked out of the house that evening, crossed the yard in silence, and threw herself into the old stone well behind the property. By the time anyone thought to look for her, she was already gone. Daniel's scream, when he found her red scarf floating on the water's surface, was the last sound anyone in that household heard him make for weeks. He stopped speaking almost entirely after that night. 3 weeks after Ruth's death, in the first week of a cold November, Daniel insisted, against his mother's wishes, on sleeping outside on a cot in the yard rather than in the house, a habit he'd kept every night since the funeral, unable to bear being near the bedroom he'd shared with his wife. Around 2 in the morning, a sound tore him violently from sleep, someone pounding steadily on the yard gate, calling his name in a voice unmistakably, impossibly familiar. Let me in. Let me in. How long have I been standing out here calling for you? Daniel bolted upright, certain, for one disoriented moment, that his mother must be the one knocking. He turned to find Margaret standing directly behind him instead, having come outside for entirely unrelated reasons, insisting she'd heard nothing at all. You're imagining things, son. There's no one at that gate. Go back to sleep. I heard her, Mother. I heard someone calling my name. I'm not imagining it. It's grief playing tricks on your mind. Nothing more. Now lie back down. Daniel obeyed, though sleep refused to return. Around 2:30, a new sound reached him. The unmistakable creak of rope being pulled through the well's pulley, drawing water in the dead of night, though no woman in that community would ever draw water at such an hour. He rose again, moved cautiously toward the sound, and called out into the darkness. Who's there? The rope stopped instantly. A woman's voice, thick with what sounded like genuine relief, answered from just beyond the gate. Let me in. I've been standing out here so long, calling and calling. Won't you finally open the door and let me sit with you a while? Daniel opened the gate. Standing before him in the darkness was a woman in a red veil, Her posture, her voice, everything about her unmistakably his wife. "You didn't even recognize me at first," she said softly. "Have you already forgotten me so quickly? Ruth, is it really you? Let me see your face." "Not yet. You'll have to wait a little longer for that. Tell me instead. Do you still think of me? This house hasn't felt like a home since the day you left it," Daniel said, his voice breaking. "Why did you leave me? Would I have left if I'd believed you'd miss me the way you're telling me now? Prove it to me, Daniel. Prove you still love me. Anything. Tell me what you need, and I'll do it. On the night of the next new moon, I'll come for you," she said. "If you truly love me, you'll come with me when I do. Will you?" "I don't want to lose you again," Daniel said. "I can't survive it a second time." "Then sit with me a while longer tonight," she said gently, settling beside him. "I promise I'll come back to you before then. Just don't tell anyone what's passed between us tonight." From that night forward, Daniel stayed awake nearly every night, terrified of missing even a single visit from his wife. 3 nights later, unable to sleep herself, Margaret rose and made her way out to the yard to check on her son. Finding him seated on his cot, speaking animatedly to what appeared, from a distance, to be an empty porch swing beside him. The swing rocking steadily back and forth despite no wind at all that night. "Who are you talking to out here, Daniel? Come inside. It's growing cold." "I'm not alone out here, Mother. Ruth is here with me. The nights pass so much easier now that she visits." "Ruth? Where is she, Daniel?" The moment Margaret spoke her daughter-in-law's name, the swing stopped abruptly, as though something had just risen from it in anger. "There. You've frightened her off. She didn't like you coming out here at all. She was watching you the whole time you spoke." Margaret felt the ground shift beneath her at those words. Shaken, she went inside and woke her husband immediately. "Something's happening to our son," she said. "I told you both over and over that a boy shouldn't sleep alone outside in the dark like this, and neither of you would listen to a word I said. What's gotten into you? Waking me at this hour over nothing?" "There is nothing about what's happening to Daniel," Margaret snapped. But before she could explain further, her legs gave out beneath her, and she collapsed to the floor. By the following evening, Margaret had developed a violent fever, barely able to speak through much of the day. Once it finally broke, she called Daniel to her bedside. "You are not to sleep outside in that yard again starting tonight," she told him. "And you will start reciting your evening prayers again, the way I taught you as a boy. Tell me honestly, son, are you truly seeing Ruth out there? Mother, in life, you never let her have a moment's peace in this house. Please, at least let her rest undisturbed now that she's gone. And I'm telling you plainly, if either of you comes between Ruth and me again, it will not go well for this family. It's only 1 more week, and then I won't be living under this roof any longer regardless." "A week? Where on earth do you think you're going, boy? Have you lost your mind entirely?" "I'm going with my wife. Wherever she's staying now, that's where I intend to be as well. I have no interest in living in a house she isn't welcome in." "Have you completely taken leave of your senses? Ruth is dead, Daniel. You cannot go on living as though the dead haven't died. She is not your wife any longer. She's a spirit now, and dead men don't get to keep living beside the ones who died before them. Don't you dare speak of her that way again in my house." Daniel's eyes went pale and unfocused mid-sentence, his entire posture shifting into something unfamiliar. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped into a low, unnatural register that bore only a faint resemblance to his own. "If he wants to come with me, what business is it of yours to stand in the way? Stay out of it or you'll regret it." Every person in that room froze. No one dared speak to Daniel again for the rest of that night. Daniel returned to something resembling normalcy within the hour, though an unmistakable, restless unease had settled permanently into his face. For the following 2 days, he neither spoke to anyone in the household nor ate or drank anything offered to him, pacing his room compulsively, wringing his hands, waiting for nightfall so he could return to his cot in the yard despite every warning. "Have you seen the way our boy's been acting?" Margaret's husband asked her quietly. He's completely under her influence now, Margaret said. It doesn't even feel like our son anymore. I'm afraid, truly afraid, she means to take him with her. They eventually sought help from a local minister known in the community for dealing with matters like this discreetly, a man who listened to their account in full before responding gravely. Your daughter-in-law's death was violent and sudden, and her spirit clearly hasn't found peace, he told them. The well sits far too close to your home. That's likely why her presence has stayed so near your family. The well needs to be moved outside the boundary of your property line, and soon. Acting on his advice, the family had the old yard gate torn down and rebuilt on the opposite side, so that the well now sat just beyond the household's boundary rather than within it. For a short while afterward, the strange occurrences around the well seemed to quiet. But Margaret, having seen what she saw the night her son spoke to an empty swing in a voice that wasn't his own, never fully slept peacefully in that house again. On the night Ruth had promised to return, Daniel waited at the yard gate long after the rest of the household had gone to bed, ignoring every plea from his parents to stay inside. Margaret, unable to sleep, watched from the kitchen window as the moon disappeared entirely behind cloud cover, the yard falling into a darkness so complete she could no longer make out her son's shape on the cot at all. She has said, in the only account she's ever given of that night, that she heard two voices speaking softly at the gate for several minutes. Daniel's, and a second voice she recognized instantly as Ruth's, gentle and warm in a way it had never once sounded while she'd been alive in that house. Then, she says, there was silence. Complete, total silence, for the rest of the night. When morning came, Daniel was gone. Daniel Hale was never found. No trace of him was ever discovered near the well, in the surrounding fields, or anywhere in the county despite an extensive search that lasted the better part of a year. The official record lists him, to this day, as a missing person, a case quietly closed without resolution. Margaret Hale lived another 11 years after that night, and by every account from those who knew her in that time, was a profoundly changed woman, softer, quieter, prone to long silences she never fully explained. She never spoke openly about what she believed had happened to her son, except once, near the end of her life, to a granddaughter on her husband's side of the family, who has chosen to share the account, with permission, for the first time here. Margaret told her that she no longer believed her son had been taken against his will that night. She believed, instead, that he had simply chosen to go, that whatever cruelty she had shown Ruth in life had been repaid, in the end, not through vengeance against her directly, but through the quiet, complete unraveling of the very family she'd fought so hard to protect through her cruelty in the first place. The well still stands today, just beyond the property's original boundary line, fenced off and rarely approached by anyone in the family that remains. Neighbors say that on certain still nights, particularly around the new moon, the sound of a rope drawing water can still be heard from somewhere near its stones, though the well itself has been dry for well over 60 years. If someone you loved came back and asked you to prove it by following them somewhere you couldn't return from, would grief make that choice feel like love, or would you recognize it as something else? Tell us in the comments whether you think Daniel was taken, or whether he chose to go. And if this story stayed with you, there's another one waiting for you right here, about a gas station on a forgotten highway where the night shift has only ever had one rule that truly matters. Never ask a customer where they're going.